Welcome to your CPA's Take on Real Estate. I'm your host, Daniel Riccotti, here back with Kyle Paxton on another video.
Always a pleasure, Daniel.
Today, we're going to talk about something that's pretty important in today's real estate industry, and that is just that preparing for refinancing. A lot of debt is coming due here in 2026. Estimated about 17% of all debt in commercial real estate is basically due this year. And so that means about one in five properties that have debt on it is going to have to think about refinancing. If it's not this year, it's going to be in the next year or two. And so we really want to talk today about it's coming up. What do we need to do to be preparing for this? Because one of the biggest things is over the last few years, a lot of real estate is just, it was basically originated at a much lower rate period. Okay. So when underwritten was done, a lot of assumptions that may not be held today, because this was low interest rates, stronger valuations, just easier capital availability, and a lot more aggressive rent growth projections. And so in today's market, you're not going to have that. So the refinancing discussion needs to happen earlier, and you need to be much more prepared.
And Daniel, this is something we've been talking about for 2 years now, right? Because 2025 was even higher. I don't have the exact percentage in front of me here, but we're in this period now where even with that, some of that 2025 debt over the last few years, as these things are coming due, we've been able to buy some time. You have extensions, modifications, sometimes some short-term solutions that move maturities down the road, but we're seeing time and time again, like the road ends here, right? We got to do something about this. And so, this is the conversation we're having across asset classes. And it's not just simply, can I refinance? It's we gotta, and how do we, what does my property support today? And then if there are issues kind of with that refinance process, what else is out there to help infuse some additional capital into the deal?
Yes, Kyle. And this is very important because I think a lot of times when we think refinancing, we think it's going to be a simple task.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not the case. We have a tendency as human beings to procrastinate our problems. And so we're like, that's a next year problem.
I
And so
don't,
we're
that's all
not.
you. I'm just kidding. Absolutely.
And unfortunately, in the real estate world, that's just not the right thing to do right now. You can really hurt your property here by not thinking about refinancing, or not even just refinancing, just what are your options and making sure that you have everything in place. So let's kind of talk into like what are some of the properties that are going to be facing the most pressure. Okay. I think everyone knows office
Yeah.
is kind of always the biggest pressure here. It's the ones that makes the headlines, but it's very variable. Okay. I mean, what's right now with office, work from home, and all that stuff, there's a lot of elevated vacancies. And so let's say maybe you had an office place that was, you got your original loan was before the pandemic or things like that. That was a completely different scenario. And, but now with the remote home, things are stabilized a little bit. So
Yeah,
I think it's happened. And with office for me, I really noticed that it's geographically based. It's
definitely.
how well the office is. Class A still does really well, but if you have more of an older Class C property, this could be a really tough decision for you. And so we just want to make sure that you realize if you have an office place, you really need to get out in front of any kind of refinancing.
Daniel, like you said, office gets the headlines. I see a ton of this in multifamily right now too, right? And it's, we've talked about this in some of these conversations before, but you're really seeing kind of the separation and modeling as you get to this refinance time on who's doing this right and who's not doing this right. And in regards to modeling around risk and the changes of assumptions that we're seeing that have kind of created this refinance, I'll use the term headache. Like Daniel said, it's across asset classes, somewhat geographically, you know, defined. But take us into a little bit, Daniel. I guess we touched on this a little bit, but do you mind expanding a little bit more on like why we're talking about this now? Like why does this matter? What is the impact? All that good stuff.
The reason why we're talking about this now is just, depending on your asset and
Yeah.
refinancing here, it's just we need to really understand how early we need to get out in front of this. What do we need to get ready for? Because your lending experience of refinancing is going to be different, most likely than when you first did it or when you did it last time.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we really got to understand your options here. One of the things that we really have to figure out is, okay, what type of property we have. All right. That's just the first step here. So we really understand what the pressure. If I have an office space right now, okay, that's already going to be a high pressure asset class. Then I need to look into my asset. All right. If I have office, all right, what type is it? Class A? Is it class C? Is it located downtown? Is it located out in the suburbs? Is it in an area where, people are more likely moving to? Is it moving away from areas? Do I have a lot of needs coming up? What is my occupancy? There's a lot of things going on here. And it's not just office space. I think office space gets just the highest level. We're also looking at other ones like multifamily. Okay. Talking to all my developers right now and just everyone in the real estate space, no one's high on multifamily right now. We always need a place to live, so it's doing better than office space just
Yeah.
because everyone has to live somewhere. But really, this was really overbuilt right after the pandemic, and rent growth is really struggling right now. And so no one's really high, and lenders know this as well. So
Yeah.
multifamily then is another area where, it's better than office, the fundamentals are, but it's not immune. So you really need to make sure you're getting out in front of multifamily just because where it is right now. A few other types is hotels. Just if you're doing in hotels are just very volatile. Okay, so anytime you're dealing with hotels, you're dealing with tourism, anything like that. And there's a lot of those that mature all the time. So just make sure you're getting out in front of that. Industrial has been very, very strong over the last couple of years after the pandemic because of the move to industrial.
Yeah.
So fundamentals are much stronger, but a lot of this is maturing and it's not as good as you still think it is just because of the overall market. If you're in retail, this is a bifurcated
Yeah.
based industry. Okay. I don't even know, like, if you got a good grocery anchored,
Yep.
shopping center with strong tenants, like, you're probably going to be okay refinancing. But if you have other retail malls, centers that don't have a good anchor, you're going to have a much harder time. And so you really need to get out in front of that. And so
Okay.
I just think,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead,
I
Cal.
was gonna say you touched on exactly what I was gonna touch on with retail, where it's that grocery anchored center is still the key and easy breezy process here, right? We see that time and time again in these conversations.
Yeah, like retail is coming back after the pandemic. Everything really moved online. I think a lot of people are more back into, hey, I want to go into the store. I want to try something on. But retail just is a tale of two stories all the time. One center is doing great, the next one's doing terrible, and it just all depends on, the actual characteristics of that shopping center. So let's talk about, all right, I have a couple options here. All
Yeah.
right. Refinancing is going to be the main one, but you don't technically have to refinance. Okay. You do have some other options, and you might have to use one of the other options if refinancing is not one that you can take care of. But refinancing is going to be the most best fit for most properties, especially if you got stable NOIs and things like that. So it's the cleanest path. It's what usually most people want. When my debt's maturing, I want to look at refinancing. Okay. So let's talk about if maybe refinancing is not an option, or are there a little bit better options? Other options are to extend or modify your current loan. All right. This is definitely not a guarantee, and you need to be talking to your lender, but maybe you're not really ready yet for a full refinance, or there's other things going on, and you could talk to your lender and say, hey, I'd like to get a little bit more time. Okay. So instead of doing a full refinance, can you give me an extra 12, 24 months here? And then we'll start talking about the refinancing process. All right. The lender might require some modifications, or it might even require a pay down of principal. But this is a good way to kind of extend your current loan, give you more time for better options when that property is just not really ready for a full refinance.
And then taking that a step further, and another option here is recapitalization. So we see this a lot in different deal structure types, right? So this is really the best fit here is when you have senior debt and it can't be refinanced to the current balance, and you got to find capital coming from somewhere else, right? I know a lot of what we're talking about here is pretty basic stuff, but it's important to reground and understand kind of what these options are, right? So in the recapitalization, this can show up in many different forms and sizes, many different forms. We see a lot of prep equity deals. If you have a sponsor in a fund type of scenario, you can do a cash in refi, mezzanine debt, joint venture equity type of deals, rescue capital, partial asset sales, things like that. And then if you get down to it, in a more kind of distressed situation, you potentially have a discounted payoff or negotiated sale scenario. So there's a lot of, I guess, shapes and sizes of recapitalization, and we see that a lot in tighter debt environments where you got to get creative with how capital is being infused. So if you either can't extend or the extension's running out on what we're doing, and then the refi doesn't make sense, you kind of get in that recapitalization territory where you got to drum up some new capital from somewhere to keep this thing floating. So we do see deals that go through that process, especially in this kind of tighter lending environment here of 2025, 2026.
Anyone who's in the real estate space is realizing that your loan capabilities are not what it used to be.
Yeah.
And so a lot of properties nowadays are actually having multi-layers of debt.
Yep.
So you still have the traditional debt, it's just not going. You're not getting that 70% like you before. I'm seeing a lot more 55%.
Yep.
Okay. So if I am only getting 55%, then I still have 15% here that I got to make up for a lot of times. Okay. And so we got to figure out how we're going to do it. So I've seen a lot of this mezzanine debt, things
Yep.
like that. Not then you're going the equity route and you're trying to find some preferred equity, things like that. But really what it comes down to is all right, I need to know what my options are. And traditional refinancing doesn't fully solve my problem, or only does partial, then I really need to think about, okay, how are other ways I can bring capital into this deal to keep it going?
And one more
Uh,
point I want to make on the recapitalization is you're messing with the capital stack, right? And you're messing with the current ownership structure and everything else. So you have to make sure that's tight. The communication around it's tight. The impact on returns to your other investors, all that good stuff has to be very modeled out and very intentionally. But something to keep in mind as you're going through that process is how does it impact kind of everybody else involved in the deal?
Absolutely. If you then start, if you're adding capital, if you're adding equity, different forms of that, it really can affect how the deal is and the ROIs and everything, and how it affects your originating investors. So you definitely want to make sure you're rewriting all that and understanding how it is.
Yep.
So let's say it's finally time for refinancing. So what are lenders doing basically to evaluating deals today? And so we talked about that, there's a decent amount of commercial real estate coming up, but most banks and things like that have really tightened,
Yeah.
okay, what they're willing to lend. And so the underwriting process is much longer. And actually, you're seeing a lot more alternative lenders because of this. Really, right now, we're actually seeing probably over 53% of commercial real estate is using about 53 from is about using some kind of alternative lender,
Wow. Yeah.
where traditional banking is only about 22% right now. And so you're seeing how commercial real estate, just the lending standards and everything is increased. And so, but the demand for new loans is basically unchanged because that's
Yeah.
just how commercial real estate is. And so really getting out in front of this and understanding what is my lender looking for. Um, and so what your lender's really doing is they're looking at worst case scenario. All
Yeah.
right. No one wants to actually take your property from you because that's not what they're in the business for. Their banks are not in the business for taking properties and selling them. They want you to just pay them back, basically. They want to make interest. And so they're going to look like, hey, if things get worse, are we protected? All right. So when you're looking at underwriting here, the lenders are looking at the top things they're looking at is your debt service cover ratio. All right. can the asset cover debt services at today's rate? That's a big difference here because, with today's rates, it could be double what you had previously. All
Easily.
right. And easily. And if you're doing something like an interest only loan, which happened a lot when we had low
Yep.
interest rate, now you didn't even pay any of the principal down. All right. And now double interest rate, that's going to be pretty significant here. So where's my debt service cover ratio? Debt yield is another area. How much can my net operating income support each dollar of loan proceeds? Okay. So how far is my actual profits going to this loan? Another really important one is loan to value. Okay. What is the loan amount relative to current, not peak values? That's the biggest difference here. And if we all fall under the same thing where we all are more optimistic about our own properties than everyone else is. So when I'm looking at what my property is worth, not what it was worth when I bought it, not what it was worth when I originally got my loan, what is it worth right now when I'm in a refinance? And I'm probably thinking it's worth more than what it actually is. What is a third party who's got no skin in the game, who's just afraid or is unsure that you're going to pay your loan back? What do they think it's worth? Okay. Couple other ones basically is what is your quality of your net operating income? Is this common reoccurring? Was it boosted? We really want to know what the quality of that is. Okay.
Daniel, I'm going to pause you there for a second and talk through like this is these things that we're talking about here. It's important to loop your CPA in, right? We deal with banks all the time. We deal with the forms of alternative lending all the time. We can speak this language and help translate the real estate operator to the bank, because we kind of sit in the middle to some degree, right? And so especially with NOI quality, it's helpful to bring the CPA in the fold to really chart out what that has looked like over time and be able to add some additional context behind it based on what's reflected on tax returns and other reporting that's CPA issued.
Absolutely. Some other important, just remember lender things that we want to check out is your lease rollover. What percentage of income expires during the loan term? This is really important for office space.
Yeah.
Okay. Something like multifamily that there's a lot of turnover, not as much. They do care. But something like office space, when a tenant leaves, especially a big one, it can be really difficult to replace or you have to put a lot of capital in. And so when you have things like that, this really matters. And then they're also looking at CapEx needs. All right. If this is an older property, class C property, is there going to be a lot of CapEx needs, a lot of deferred maintenance, things like that. And then you always need to know they're going to look at you. All right. We're going to look at every single number, but at the end of the day, they're coming back and they're looking at the sponsor. All right. Do I believe you are going to do everything in your power to pay this loan back? Okay. What is your net worth? What is your track record? What is your liquidity? So, what are your willingness to support the asset? And so you got to remind yourself that, hey, the book's got to look good, but also you need to look good because you're selling yourself in this. And so having a good relationship with a bank or any kind of lender is important because you can be that crucial piece here to decide sometimes, if they're willing to lend with you because they believe in you, the individual.
The elephant in the room, Daniel, is the relationship game. Obviously, it's got to come back to the numbers, and the numbers have to make sense to the bank. But so much of this is relationship driven, and we spend a significant amount of our time networking with bankers for this reason. And certainly, as owners of real estate, you should be doing the same thing, right? Just to help build those connections and get some more of that soft comfort that comes with that relationship that you've built, and certainly you're going to be more willing to lend to someone you have a strong relationship with over a new face.
So relationships are important in real estate no matter what, but really important within lender.
Yep.
So let's actually start giving a little bit of a game plan here. All right. I have some debt maturing. When do I need to start thinking about this? And the rule is 18 months before. Okay. That seems like a long time, but really at the 18-month mark, you really need to start getting your financial metrics. We just talked about what lenders are going to be
Yep.
looking at. We need to start making sure those metrics. So we need to make sure we have good accounting, good bookkeeping, and we're understanding our actual financials and our metrics here so that we can get ready for that. So from I would say about 18 months out, 12 to 18 months out, we're really diagnosing the problem here. We're basically gathering our documents, identifying our options, and then identifying our metrics and where we need to improve because we're going to be giving all this information to a lender and we're going to want to re-update our valuation. Okay, not the one we originally did,
Yep.
not the one in the back of our head, a very conservative valuation because that's what your lender is going to use. Okay, once you're out about a year out, 9 to 12 months out, then that's when the conversation needs to start happening with the lender. All right, so we have about a 6-month runway to prepare for a conversation with the lender. All right,
Should be enough.
hopefully, yeah, hopefully you have an ongoing conversation with your lender, so you're always there.
Yeah.
I highly suggest that you do that. You don't just disappear for several years and then show back up once every 5 years. It's usually not the best place, but about 12 months out, 9 to 12, you need to start having this conversation with this lender. All right. You need to talk to them when the pressure is the least. Okay. We have a lot of time. So we can start talking about financials and updating our business plan and talking to the lender about our options. Can we talk about an extension? Can we talk about a modification? All right. Or what is my loan value that you're going to give me? Oh, it's going to be a lot less than I thought it was. I'm going to have to have this gap here and I need to start talking about that. Okay. And so that talking to the lender as with giving you as much time as possible just gives you options so that you're not rushing to get this done. All right. About 6 to 9 months out, then now we're starting to actually prepare everything for
And
it.
that's
Okay.
potentially preparing 3 different plans, right? So you're really getting everything together to have a couple different strategies in case any of what we've talked about in the last several months goes south.
Right. So now I've talked to my lender. I know my options. I know my downfall. Can I just do a clean finance? Can I do an extension or a modification? Or do I need to start talking about recapitalization? Like I mentioned before, if they're only going to give me 55%, but I needed 70%, um, what am I doing with that next 15%? I got to find another plan here. Okay. And so this is when now we're doing it. Now, when I'm about 3 to 6 months out, this is when we're actually executing whatever it needs to be done. That's the lending. So this is unfortunately when a lot of people start thinking about it
Yeah.
is about 3 to 6 months.
To your point earlier,
And
the
this
procrastinators.
yeah,
Yep.
this
Hmm.
is when most people think about it. And reality is this is the last step. This is when you're actually
Yeah.
doing the refinancing. This is when the lender's getting the packages. This is when they're getting the reports. If you were looking at this 18 months in advance, you had at least a year to get ready for this moment, make the numbers better, do whatever you had to do, see your options. If you put yourself 3 to 6, you're just giving whatever the market gives you. Okay. You're just going with it. And this is when a lot of people have problems because they're just accepting the consequences that was given to them and let it controlling their destiny themselves and where their property is going.
Daniel, I'll take us out of here, my friend. What we're talking about here is very real for 2026. Some owners refinance, some will extend, some need an infusion of new capital. This takes many different forms right now. It's not a one size fits all conversation in 2026. So if you're an owner with debt maturing sometime in the next 18 months, start with the supportable loan proceeds, your current balance, available liquidity, chart out the metrics we were talking about before if you're not already doing that, and that helps you kind of understand where you're at in the refinance territory or if you need to do some recap work. We talk ad nauseum in these videos about the accessibility of data. Review your debt schedules, make sure they're up to date. Identify the maturities and your loan covenant issues in that, and start building that package now, before we're in that last minute procrastination window.
And just
Hey,
one thing last, just remind yourself refinancing is not a one size fits all for everyone,
yeah,
and make sure you're getting out in front of it. 18 months, if it's before 18 months, or whatever, sooner is better than
yeah.
later. So when this is coming up, try to tackle it as soon as possible. You'll be glad you did. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.